Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Silly Steve Barber. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Delicious Dwaylon Davis.
Hey, everybody.
And as a very special guest this week, we have former co-host Kyle, the kid himself. Kyle.
Wah.
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 Yeah, because compared to me and Dwaylon, he almost is a kid. You know,
I'm a baby.
yeah, barely in your 40s, and me and Dwaylon are almost in our 50s.
Yeah.
You guys got more hair though.
On our face, but not much. Well, okay. This right here, though, this is a skullet. I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
I told you you've had a skullet for years, but you're getting to the point where you could take the beard and comb it over the top and create your own form of mullet for the mullet championships next year.
I could totally go for that. And for those
or you could bring the hair around and braid
that actually
braid
it.
Yeah. Connected.
Because, I mean, I haven't cut it now in like 4.5 years. You know, so it's curly.
You can get some beads.
I have thought about that. It's bad enough, you know, Tawana's threatening to cut it off, you know, cut my beard off while I'm asleep. But you know, here soon I might just take it down a little bit, just because, you know, go for a new look, a little bit. So,
well, hold on. You should trade the curio for shaving or trimming the beard.
Oh, the cubio,
the cubio, as we called it. It should be a negotiation.
Yeah, Joel, I don't know if you saw that, where we a curio cabinet, and it had been sitting empty, and I'm like, I'm gonna put all my cubes in there, and Tawana was like, she didn't believe me, so one day she came home and all my cubes were in there. So after that, you know, Kyle named the cubio.
The cubio. I like that.
Yeah, you know, so, and then that's when she bought me the shelf that, you know, I keep them on. That I got some now.
So you could get the cubes out of her curio cabinet.
Yeah, exactly.
he was relegated to the back of the house.
Yep.
For his cubes.
Yeah.
So, but tonight we are going to be discussing the career of one AA Arn Anderson, the enforcer of the Four Horsemen, because today is the 25th anniversary of Arn Anderson announcing his retirement live on Nitro. And that was a pretty emotional occasion, because me at first, I mean, I was watching it when it happened. I was like, is this real? Then come to find out, yeah, it's like he really did retire for his own health reasons.
Yeah.
Pre-internet.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, I had the internet, but it wasn't like it is now. You
know? Yeah. You didn't have Twitter, where you can get like pretty much any news story like instantly. So
yeah.
And the great thing about this was, I was living in Las Vegas at this point. We would get Monday Night Nitro at 5:00 at night.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So it was Nitro from 5 to 8, and the overrun, which seemed to happen all of 1997.
Yeah.
And you go straight into Raw, which had the Hart Foundation angle with Bret Hart at this time.
Yep.
Oh, it did. Yeah.
So this was like the peak of wrestling for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, if you lived on the West Coast, you could, you know, the Monday Night Wars, you could catch both shows every Monday without even having to record them.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you couldn't. You needed a VCR, if people remember what those are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to watch one show and record the other. And depending on what matches they were having, depending on which show I recorded, and which one I watched live. So,
but before we really get started on that, I do want to give our contact listening info. Kyle, you haven't actually done this in a long time. So if you would like to email the show, it's armchairbookingpodcast@gmail.com. If you would like to find us on Facebook at facebook.com/armchairbookingpodcast. You can find us on Instagram also at armchairbookingpodcast. You can find us on Twitter at bookingarmchair. You can find us on TikTok at armchairbooking. You can find us on YouTube on video. That's the only video platform that I know of that we're on. And audio platforms, we're on just about any kind of audio platform you can think of. If we're not there, let one of us know, and we will do whatever we can to get ourselves added. You can go to our merch store, tpublic.com/user/armchair-booking-podcast. You can find things like shirts. You can find coffee mugs, not the travel mug. They no longer sell those. Made me kind of sad. But the regular coffee mug, they do still have those. You can get phone cases like this one. Yes. See it, Kyle?
Yep.
Yep. And the shirts, actually, if you notice, that design has like the reverse of the logo. With the logo normally has red letters, white ring. This one has white letters, red ring. And you get if you're going back to wearing the mask because of COVID, it actually has some of those. I mean, just all sorts of things you can get at the merch store. You can also find Dwaylen on his Twitter at @fat_daddy73, and also his YouTube and his TikTok. Just go look up Big and Fat, because he is a fat daddy, and the other half of the Big Mama.
Yeah.
And you can find my other podcast, the Cubicle Chat, on any audio platform, and that one also on Twitter at @cubicle_chat. Have I missed anything?
No, I believe you got it all.
Well, no, you have a new platform that you were trying to get. Did you get it?
I have not been able to successfully get like YouTube Music. Apparently that's one you can do, but I don't know if you have to pay to get back on that one, and I'm already paying a Spreaker enough money as it is.
Yeah.
So and so that is one I would love to see if I can get on Sirius XM, but that one's a long shot. That's a stretch goal. If we can get on that, that would be just absolutely
that'd be
golden.
amazing. Yeah.
But I don't even know if they have any wrestling podcast on their podcast channels.
Actually, Busting Open is on there.
That one is. I think that one's like number one in the rankings.
Yeah.
The 30-minute highlight show.
Is that I haven't even really listened to Bustin' Loose. And I'm actually going to look and see if we are in the ratings right now while we're talking about it. And we are not currently in the top 200, because we have made it all the way up to in the 80s as far as like the top 200 wrestling podcasts. But I mean, it's so hard, and I don't know how the algorithm works. So I mean, it's kind of hard to go push for ratings. However,
yeah,
if you want to give us a rating, you can always do that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. They actually have rating systems on there, and on Apple Podcasts you can actually give us a written review. So there we go.
There we go.
And I do want to talk about some news real quick with AEW, because Dwaylen sent me a text earlier and said, "Oh my God, all sorts of stuff is happening in AEW." And there was literally, where the cubicle where the guy was sitting with, the guy on the other side of him, like right after you sent that text and said a lot of stuff happening, he was telling his friend, "Hey, you need to watch AEW. There's a lot of stuff happening." I'm like, what? And I was like, "Oh, I was like, do you know Dwaylen or something?" So, but he was talking the same thing that you were texting me about Moxley beating Punk in 3 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it was a squash. Me personally, it's been very divisive on Twitter. A lot of people hated it. A lot of people loved it. I'm in the latter. I loved it. I thought it was great. I mean, they kind of blurred that line where you don't know if Punk's legitimately hurt, because he was selling the foot that he broke and had surgery on. So you don't know how much is legit and how much is a work, which for me is the best thing when they do that in wrestling. And Mox looked just dominant, and I got what I wanted, because I wanted Mox to unify the titles anyway, so it worked out good. Excuse me.
I just don't buy Mox as a MMA fighter like that. Not that CM Punk is any better going 0-2 in the UFC.
Well, Mox is more of a Mox is not really like his character's not really MMA. It's just like a street
fighter.
Yeah, he's just like a street brawler.
So
which is the only thing, which is what they didn't let him do in WWE. He's been that way everywhere else, but before and after WWE. So
go ahead, Kyle.
The kick to his lower calf, that hurts.
Legit. I bet
that does hurt.
Hurts really bad. But him throwing it, I don't know. I think I do side with Cornette on his punches. not registering very well, him not selling in these brawls that he's so good at.
Mm-hmm.
He's an excellent leader.
Yeah. So, but when we've been talking about, CM Punk, and Kyle, I had to bring up what you had said about him a long time ago, and you described him as a malcontent, which that's why I was like, when he came back last year, I was like, let's see how long it takes for that other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
And he starts going me, and it took a year, and he's back to going me.
Yeah. I see this as a heel turn. I think we're going to get full blown heel Punk now, because he's done the babyface thing, but with everything swirling around him, backstage stuff, it makes more sense just to have him as a heel instead of trying to keep pushing him as a face.
What's going to happen with MJF?
Who knows? I mean,
I don't know.
$1 million question.
If he doesn't show up at All Out, then I don't know when he's coming back, because I mean that would be the absolute perfect time for him to show up. Rumor has it that they're going to do Mox and Punk again at All Out, because it is in Chicago, and you got Punk because the match last night, Moxley basically had home field advantage because they were in Ohio. So at All Out, if they do the rematch, Punk gets home field advantage because they're right outside Chicago. So that would be the perfect time in my mind for MJF to show up, either challenge the winner, attack both guys, something, because I mean he's still under contract till 2024 unless Tony Khan just decides I'm done with him and just cuts him loose, which Tony Khan hasn't done in the entire short history of AEW. So
let's go with a prediction. MJF, Joker entrant in the Casino Battle Royal.
They are, yeah, they are doing the casino ladder match. Yeah, they are. That's a good one. I didn't think of that.
A cash in Chicago against the winner of the main event.
He could.
MJF leaves Chicago
as the champion. Yeah,
as the champion.
And then you've got two built-in feuds. He could either feud with Punk, they have history. He could feud with Moxley, they have history. So you've got two built-in world title feuds for him off the bat. That's a good prediction. I like that.
And then you got Wardlow hanging in the background.
Yep, that is true. Yep.
So you have three. Now, Tony Khan doesn't book like that, but maybe he should start listening to some people, because malcontent is a word that is going around the AEW locker room in all these pages. There's more than one malcontent right now on the roster.
Eddie Kingston just finished serving a suspension because he swung at Sammy Guevara backstage. I honestly can't blame him for swinging at Sammy Guevara because he has a face you want to punch. But it's just it's stuff like that, and it's like there's issues with Thunder Rosa backstage. There's a lot. She's not very well liked in the women's locker room. Some women are saying she's way too stiff in the ring and things of that nature. And then she's out with an injury. I read earlier, I think it was on PW Insider, that it's a disc in her back that's given her problems. So she's not going to be defending the women's title. They're going to have a fatal four-way to determine an interim women's champion until she's able to come back, or if she's able to come back. So, but we got that. But yeah, there's a lot of backstage issues in AEW. And I mean, you have that in any wrestling company, but like you said, Kyle, Tony Khan's got to get that under wraps, because this company's too young to have that kind of turmoil backstage.
Yep.
And there's not the leadership structure.
No, there's not. Because I mean, say what you want about Triple H. I mean, he is a leader. I mean, and he's not afraid to, even if it means sacrificing himself. Even though, of course, I mean, we know there's been some talk about Triple H is all for himself. In some ways, yes, but when it comes to the organization, when it comes to the company and wrestling in general, he's not. He does not believe he's bigger than the sport itself.
Right.
Not
Tony Khan has put some other people in place to kind of have a little more structure. He's added more people to talent relations so that there's a better communication, because that was a lot of an issue too, was the lack of communication. Of course, they only had one person. Christopher Daniels was the only person that was doing talent relations. So a lot of stuff fell through the cracks. You got one person trying to deal with, a full roster of people. Not everybody's communication is not always going to be there. So he's got more people involved in that. And then, of course, you still got Kenny Omega and the Bucks, who are, EVPs, and they're doing more as far as talking with talent. There's some more people in the coaching section and things. So I think he's realizing that he can't do it all by himself. So I'm just hoping he gets all this other stuff under wraps, because for me, AEW puts out too good of a product to let, like you said, Kyle, malcontents ruin it.
Now, I'm not an Eddie Kingston fan. He's pretty much the bag boy at Walmart for me. I
like Eddie Kingston. I always have, though. I've watched him on the independents. I watched him in Impact Wrestling. He's just, he gives you that element of realism that you don't get a lot of times. It's like you believe he's going to come out there and beat the crap out of somebody. For me, it's like he makes everything he says is very believable. And there's been a few, of course, guy we're going to talk about later, Arn Anderson, was like that. You believed Arn was going to come out and beat the crap out of you. You believed everything he said. And I like Eddie. I like the fact that he's been open about his mental health issues, because a lot of people, especially men, don't want to, admit to that kind of thing. So
that's a whole discussion. You see it on your Facebook page. I've mentioned in text to Steve the battles we face that we don't really have anyone to talk to about.
Yep.
And it is different. Now, mental health aside, I wouldn't pay to watch Eddie Kingston wrestle.
I would.
Don't sugarcoat it, Kyle. I mean, how do you feel about it?
And I mean, he's not for everybody. I mean, I get it. There's a lot of people that don't like Eddie Kingston. Me personally, I'm a fan.
I mean, we were saying not too long ago, it's like, I'd like to see him get like a run, because he's been around a while and he's really worked his butt off. And he's kind of like Mick Foley, where, you can put the belt on him. You're not going to put it on him for very long, but you can still put the belt on him. But getting suspended, though, like a real life suspension, does not do him any favors.
No, and the thing is, though, he admitted that he was wrong. He posted on Twitter, and because somebody asked him about it, and he said that, Sammy did what he did, and everybody knows, everybody backstage knows it, but he's like, I was wrong for being unprofessional. I've got to do better than, he said, I've got to react better than what I did. He said, and I was wrong and I was unprofessional. So I respect the fact that he took accountability for the fact that he messed up.
For Eddie Kingston, you're 100% right. Sammy Guevara is someone you just want to walk out and slap.
Yeah, he's like the Miz. He's just got that face, and it's just like
just look up at your face. I just
And having Tate Conti on his side, it's not helping his punchability factor.
No, because it's making. I'm a fan of Sammy Guevara, the wrestler. Once the bell rings, I'm a fan of his in-ring work. But the character stuff is just annoying. And then him and Ty Conti, who is his wife in real life, they just amp up the annoyance. And I know that's part of their heel gimmick, but it's like, can we dial that back a little bit because it's just when they
Wow.
come on screen, I'm just like, when's this over? Can we
Well,
get to the next segment, please?
so they are
Hot
pushing them
take.
like the Miz. Think
Yes,
about that. They're
yes.
like they're pushing them like the Miz and Maurice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We're gonna get to the end of Arn Anderson here. A hot take for a YouTube clip. Is Sammy Guevara this generation's X-Pac?
Oh,
Ooh,
wow.
that's a good one because I mean the heat that he's generating is very
It's,
similar to
it's getting the go away heat.
it's getting to be like just
Yep.
yeah. And X-Pac was the same way. It got to where once the bell rang, I was always entertained by X-Pac in the ring. I
And
said
his
Xbox.
and the
Yeah.
Xbox.
Yeah. I was always entertained by X-Pac in the ring, but everything else got on my nerves.
Yep. His mullet, Steve. Like
well,
next week it's Steve X-Pac Barber.
yeah. We'll tell you what. No. Dwaylen saw both the mullets I had back before I went to the Air Force. The one I had when we graduated, then I cut it off a couple months later, and then I grew it right back out again a couple years, and then I cut it off right before I went to basic training.
I remember when you cut it off. As soon as you cut it, you're like, I shouldn't have done
that. Closest I got to hairstyles was we had decided to bleach our hair blonde, so I had a Daniel Pewter blonde haircut for a week, and that was the week I bought clippers from the base PX, and that was it. Because I got in so much trouble for my blonde hair.
Yeah. So you were in tech school?
Tech school.
I'm guessing.
Yep.
Yeah. So, wow. Well, the things you do in tech school, that kind of, makes sense actually. So
that was my favorite base, Goodfellow. The amount of things to do in Goodfellow that were non-productive for an 18-year-old young man. Hair dye is probably number 22 on the list of things that I shouldn't have done in Texas.
Yeah. So, but we do need to go ahead and get on with the main topic. I mean, I thought about even segue bringing up Brock Anderson, but like, you know what? I don't really know what Brock Anderson is doing too much, except for he's in AEW.
Yeah, he's been on Dark. He's been on Dark and Elevation mainly. He's still, he's still up and coming. He's still training, but I think he's going to be good.
Okay, so I mean, is his dad training him?
Yeah,
a little
bit.
But Brock is in his Super Olympia phase of Arn's career.
Yeah.
So put him under a mask, let him learn to work. He's too fresh to be an Anderson.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, because I mean, you look at him and it's like it's literally like looking at Arns when he was that age, and it's like I agree. That's at this stage of his career, it's not going to do him any favors to get pegged as an Arn Anderson clone because nobody else can be Arn Anderson. I mean, doesn't matter how good the kid is, he doesn't need to have that kind of shackle on him.
He's got the Anderson name, but he's enhancement talent.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same as Brian Pillman Jr.
Yeah.
Who could be great, but not with what they're doing with him right now.
Yeah, I agree.
So Arn Anderson, also known as Martin Anthony Lundy, born September 20th, 1958. The man is 63 years old.
So you know the other thing about Arn Anderson here?
What's the other thing?
He and I share a birthday.
Oh, okay.
Not the same year.
No, not. But I was September 20th. There we go. I'll have to remember that, Dwaylen.
Yep.
So
just 22 years apart. 1980, Kyle, or
1979.
79.
79.
So 21 years. So Arn Anderson just became legal to drink the day you were born.
No, he'd been drinking for 3 years
Well,
because
oh, that's right. Because in the 70s, yeah, it was 18 a lot of places still.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Wow, and then in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, if you went to the Copper Still, not the one by where Dwaylen lived, but another one, another road, you could buy it at any age. They didn't care.
Oh yeah, they didn't care.
Yeah, the one on Greenville Road, yeah, they didn't care.
Oh
Anyway.
yeah, if you had money in your hand, that's all they cared about. But
Yep.
Kentucky at 21, you're on your second marriage.
You know what? Some people were.
yeah,
We knew some people who were on their second marriage at 21.
yeah,
Which is really sad. But yeah, so he actually wrestled under his real name, but he also wrestled as, like I said, Super Olympia,
mm-hmm.
and mostly in Continental, and which is based around Pensacola, which I actually happen to like Pensacola a lot because that's where I went to tech school. And he was doing pretty well. And if you've listened to his podcast and he talks about his time down in Pensacola, I mean, it just sounds like the absolute life because he had his apartment, but they went and stayed. They were on Pensacola, or they went to the beach like every day.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't travel a ton. It wasn't until he went to Mid-South later on that they did all that travel, and then he went back to Pensacola, and because he had also met Erin, his wife, and there's a little bit of an age there. I didn't know this until you start talking about it on his podcast. He was like around 26, and she was like 17. Right?
Oh wow!
Yeah, when they started dating.
No comment.
Yeah, so that didn't go over very well with her family at first.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah,
but you think of Continental and Arn Anderson with that short of distance driving, the death rate amongst Continental wrestlers is a lot lower.
True.
So with the distances traveled, there's a lot fewer fatalities from the Fuller family who ran Continental versus other territories where uppers, downers to stay up and make those drives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd never even thought about it like that. I mean, it's a good point because like Mid-South was known for their just, if you ever saw like their loop, I mean, they're driving like 400 miles a day, just at least just to get to the next town. And so it's like, they got very little sleep because, well, you're driving or maybe swapping out drivers. Like I said, you're taking uppers and downers to maintain whether you need to sleep or you need to not sleep. And
and that territory, like how he got out of Mid-South and all he does is drink beer. Like really, for those drives, he came out really well for an 80s wrestler that lived the lifestyle of a horseman.
Yeah.
But when he went to go ahead, Kyle.
Do you think that's because of his commitment to Erin, his wife, that we didn't know about at the time, or him as a human being? Because he openly says he wasn't really into that stuff.
I mean, I think probably a combination of all the above. I mean, because you never hear stories about Arn Anderson stepping out on Erin. You never hear him.
Yeah.
I mean, they say he drinks, and he's talked about that, but he was not like a lush like some of his peers.
Yeah. Well, that's like with the Clique. They were kind of the same way. Triple H was
he's a
teetotaler. Yeah, he was the straight guy, and then after that, it would be Nash would be the next closest one because Nash drank, but I don't think he did any. I don't even think he did any hard drugs or anything. And but yeah, it's like there's always one in a group that's just like, no, that's not for me. Y'all go ahead. I'll be all right.
Yeah.
But the first time I saw Arn Anderson was when he first came to Mid-Atlantic, and that was in late '84, and he immediately got into a feud with Raging Bull and Manny Fernandez. And when I was watching that, And Arn Anderson, his finishing move at the time was the Gourd Buster.
Yep.
Which, if you don't know what a Gourd Buster is, for those listening at home or watching on the video, I'll do kind of give a demonstration, with an invisible man. It's like they hold him up for a vertical suplex, straight up, and then straight back down on their face.
Yep.
And, he's actually talked about that on his podcast, that even though it's almost like the DDT, they say if you flatten out, it actually looks devastating, but you flatten out and you actually barely even feel anything.
Right.
He said, but a lot of guys they were afraid to take the move because, you're coming straight down on your face.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was his finisher for a while. And now they say, well, now he has a spine buster. The spine buster was never really a finisher. It was a setup move, but it was never really a finisher.
Yeah, it was usually a setup move, and then a move or two later, he'd hit the DDT and end it. Now, him and Tully, when they were a tag team, they used the double gourd buster.
Double gourd and the spike pile driver.
And the spike and the spike pile driver, but they did use the double gourd buster for a while.
And when he first went against Manny, and they actually had that match on regular TV, which was like, oh, they're having and he beat Manny Flanders with the Gourd Buster 1, 2, 3, and I'm like, okay, I don't know who this guy is, but he just beat the Raging Bull. The Raging Bull is one of my favorites, and so now I'm scared of him. But yes, I was like, okay, this guy, this Arn Anderson guy, who they're saying might be a cousin of Ole, and I was like, he's for real. This dude is for real. But think about that. A lot of people think about wrestlers who innovate stuff. Arn Anderson invented the Gourd Buster, and he invented the Spine Buster. The Gourd Buster you never see anymore, just because for whatever. I think somebody needs to bring it back.
Yeah.
Along with the Slingshot Suplex.
Yep.
And but the Spine Buster, just about every wrestler does their version of a Spine Buster.
Yeah.
And
almost too many.
Yeah,
I agree. Almost too many. Right now, I think Powerhouse Hobbs probably has the best spine buster right now, just because his size and he's quick with it too. I always thought Bobby Roode had a good one. Triple H's was always hit or miss.
Well, for me, Triple H, his was the closest it came to Arn Anderson. If you look at the technique and everything, round up, spin, boom. But then Ron Simmons, his was he just threw him down like a sack of trash.
Oh, Ron Simmons was just like,
boom.
Get away from me.
Yeah.
But Arn's Spinebuster almost looked like, when he made the turn, it looked so quick. It was like slow motion, though. It was it's like he picked the guy up and do the twist, and it's like he'd pause, like he's telling the guy, this is about to hurt really bad. And then he'd drop the guy.
Yeah.
And he never got him really high off the ground.
No.
So the strength in that, the reduction in the back force, Mick Foley talked about taking a spine buster and how much that hurt, because your legs were out, your hips were out, because you're basically the guy's in between your legs.
Yeah.
But the snap and just the blunt power that has to come to pick a man 6 inches off the ground and snap him like that is really impressive.
Yes, absolutely.
But Powerhouse Hobbs, we talk about a slingshot suplex. I met that man in Baltimore.
Did you really?
And at Celeb Fest, he was up here, and I was talking to him in a vending line. And I did not pay to do his photo. He was not part of my grouping. But that man is so much bigger than me and just thicker. As I stood next to him, and I go, damn, I am a big guy, and I am a runt compared to you. But you would be perfect to do a slingshot jackhammer.
Oh,
that would be impressive.
Yeah.
That would be so unique. There's very few that could pull that off. And we were talking about that in the vending line. Because if I was strong enough to do that to everyone, that would be my move in a wrestling ring.
Slingshot jackhammer. I like that.
Yeah.
And NWF, I don't know if you know anyone. Not Adam Swayze. Anyone I've seen on the videos so far, but there has to be someone strong enough that can do that move. Because
Oh,
you have
I'll have to go through their roster that, well, I know because I mean, I haven't been able to catch as many of their events here lately that I used to be able to just because I just haven't been able to. I've been gone, or supposed to be gone. And, I hate that I actually missed a Mount Orb show. He's 10 minutes away from my house and I missed it because we were down in Florida. I tried to talk to my wife, but wouldn't let me.
I bet Big Mama could pull it off on the female roster too.
She might. Yeah, Dwaylen, if we have her back on the show, we'll have to ask her.
Yeah, we'll have to ask her about that. Yeah.
But a slingshot jackhammer, that's the way to go.
Well, you know what? Kimba suplexed or body slammed DC.
Did he really?
Yes.
Ooh.
So that could
that could work.
Because Kimba, I mean, he's got some power behind him. And I was thinking Tiny Tim, because Tiny Tim, I mean, he's just muscle.
Yeah.
Because he also does, Kyle, you like him. He does it was a powerlifting or bodybuilding on the side. Do you remember?
I think it was bodybuilding.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to ask him next time I'm at church too how he's come along with that, because when he got hurt, of course he had to slow down for a bit because he had a little bit of a hernia, and so it kind of set him back for a bit.
Yeah,
not fun at all.
No, and I mean it was bad if he had to have surgery for it. So but to see Arn kind of swing it back to Arn with one move that I think they should bring back, but then with the Spinebuster, like we said, everybody has their version of it. And so Arn's left his legacy with that. And then he's also one of the best talkers in the game because you believed every word he said.
Yes. There are times where I will just type in YouTube Arn Anderson promos and just let it play, because it's like he had some of the best promos, in my opinion, in wrestling history. Arn is easily in my top 5 favorite wrestlers ever. I first saw him when it's on an episode of Championship Wrestling when him and Ole were the national tag team champions.
No,
and I don't remember the exact episode. I just know they cut an interview and then went to the ring and just dismantled these two guys. I mean, and like Steve Austin said it best. He's like, they would just take a body part and just render it useless.
Mm-hmm.
And that's missing big time. Because the one thing, Arn Anderson, every match, and it was never the same. Just pick a body part.
Yep.
Take the dude out.
Yep.
And with the Andersons and Arm, they got a leg a couple times. It was usually Ole. As a kid, I would have been 5, 6 years old watching TBS.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Arn holding the dude and Ole coming off the top with that knee.
Yes. Yep.
Busting that dude up.
Yeah.
And they'd make the dude submit to an armbar.
Yeah.
A basic move.
It's a basic armbar.
Yeah. And so that's even more, making the guy feel even more milky. It's like, I had to submit to an armbar because, I mean, his arm was coming out of socket from all the other damage they had done to it, because Arn, I saw Arn do this more than Ole, but he put him in the hammerlock, and he reached with his left hand and hold the hammerlock there, scoop between the legs and slam them on top of their arm.
Yes. Yep. And like he would do that. That would be like within like the first couple of moves that he did, and as soon as he did that hammerlock slam, it was like, well, that guy's about to lose his arm because Arn's going to work that arm the rest of this match.
Yep.
And you knew it going in. You knew whatever body part he first zeroed in on, he never deviated from that. He always, because a lot of guys you see in wrestling now, they'll start out working, say they work start working on somebody's right knee. Then they'll turn around and start working on their arm, and it's like, stay with the knee. That you started that, stay with that. And Arn always stayed with whatever body part he started working with.
And never repeated a body part that was worked on in another match on the card. And that's something I don't appreciate until I was much older and more sophisticated as a wrestling fan. That when you watch a Starrcade, an early Starrcade, and you see Arn and Ole, they don't work a body part that someone else worked in the rest of the card.
Yeah, because the match before theirs, they probably would have worked on like a leg or something. If their finisher moves with figure 4, they'd be working on their leg, and so they wouldn't tear up the arm. Whereas the Andersons, they were going to tear up your arm.
Yeah, and especially once the Horsemen became a thing, they would work the leg, but they would work it different than Flair, because they knew they knew when Flair was in his match, he's working the leg to set up the figure 4. But the Andersons would work the leg so they could break it. So
one of my most vivid memories watching wrestling was the Bunkhouse Stampede, where the Horsemen were the final 4.
Yes. I love that. Yeah.
Arn goes over, Tully goes over, and Lex throws JJ, and they take the chair, and they don't clip his leg like you would in football. They hit him with, honestly, an elementary school chair.
Yeah.
And they hit him in the upper hip.
Yeah. Yep.
And you have JJ holding him out, Tully in a figure 4, and Arn doing the splash on the figure 4.
Yep.
Oh.
And the visual in that, because Luger could sell a beating.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Luger does not get enough credit for his selling. He was always, especially like you said, he could always sell a beating.
So that was really, I didn't get the Horsemen until much later, till I got the internet. The early Horsemen, I got the Barry Windham, Lex Luger, honestly, Lex Luger Horseman in 87. Then he leaves the Horsemen bunkhouse. Him and Barry win the tag team championships against Arn and Tully.
Yep.
And then the match where Barry turns on Lex.
Yep.
Yes.
Slams him, does the lariat, and then Luger looks at him. Not Luger, but Arn looks.
Yeah.
Like
and Barry does the symbol. And I'm like, oh, here we go.
Because speaking of, watching somebody do a perfect move, I tell people, if you want to see like the best lariat, like any single lariat ever, because Barry Windham had a great one to begin with, but the best example was in that particular one.
Yes.
Where he hit Luger with it. Because, he went airborne. Barry Windham's 6'6".
Yeah.
And he went airborne parallel with the ground and just
caught him.
Just a gifted, that was the clothesline from hell before JBL pulled it off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is, well, you know what? Maybe Barry taught it to him, because when they were the new Blackjacks.
That's true. Yeah. Could be.
Yeah.
Except for I like Barry's better. Well,
yeah.
JBL's, it's devastating. That one didn't look like it felt good.
I like JBL's better when he was in the Acolytes than when he was WWE champion.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
Because he didn't really beat anyone as champion.
Yeah.
That was a big man to be a coward heel.
Yeah.
And
he did a good job being a cowardly heel. And you got to have those in wrestling. So.
But you guys are more seasoned wrestling fans. What?
That's a nice way of saying old.
So, what moments do you remember WCW, NWA at that period? Most of the key moments involved Arn.
Yeah. I agree. Michael Hayes has said several times in different interviews, especially talking about the Horseman. He's like, there would be no Horseman without Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson was the glue
Mm-hmm.
that held that group together. He was, he was the linchpin.
And when he first stole the television title belt from Dusty and was walking around calling himself champion, and he said, "I got the belt, that makes me the champ," and he was defending it.
Yeah.
Until Dusty finally, hit him with a chair and during the interview. I mean, and he hit him hard too.
Oh yeah.
And he took it back, and that's when he surrendered it because it was being held up anyway because Dusty had that broken leg.
Yeah.
And they had the tournament, and Arn actually beat Wahoo in the final to win the belt.
Yep.
Because that says something about Wahoo McDaniels put Arn Anderson over. Manny Fernandez put him over. Dusty put him over because they recognized this guy has got a serious amount of talent, and he's got the charisma and everything, and he's going to go far, and we're just going to help him along the way on his journey. But I was trying to think, has Arn Anderson ever been a face instead of a heel? Because
there were times some times during like mid 90s, like before the NWO, there would be times where he would be a face, but it was just really short. Like when him and Flair feuded, that time they had that match at Fall Brawl. Arn was the face, of course. That all ended up being a setup, turn on Sting and reform the Horsemen, which was fantastic. My sister hated it because she was a Sting fan, but I loved it, so it was good. But every now and then he was a face by default when the NWO came in, because the Horsemen were faces by default, but not very often. Arn was a heel most of the time.
I think he was so great as a heel because you just wanted to see him get beat, but you knew he wasn't going to get beat.
Yeah,
and not very often.
Even as a heel, he was respected. The fans respected him.
Yeah. In ECW, he got cheered, but that's the fan base.
Yep.
But Smoky Mountain is the only time I can remember him getting a true face pop. But
when he was under the sheet, he was the mystery. He was the mystery partner for the Rock and Roll Express. That's right. Yep. He did, because Cornette pulled the sheet off, and that crowd just lost their mind.
So that may have been the only time. And talk about face pops, when he partnered with Hulk Hogan against Ric Flair towards the end of WCW.
Yeah.
Now my favorite moment was him beating Hogan on an early edition of Nitro.
Yep, that's right. He did.
And that says something, because Hogan didn't lay down for much of anybody.
That'll work for me, brother.
Yeah, that don't work for me, brother. But you think of the world television title, anytime anybody ever talks about it, the first person I think of is Arn Anderson.
Yeah.
And the classic world TV title that had the red leather. It's like, I love that belt. Yeah. And the silver plate. Yeah. I love that belt. And I always think of Arn, whenever anybody mentions that belt, because he was just, he was the face of that championship.
And that's missing with him being a coach in AEW. The television title with the time limit, that is a missing element in today's TV shows.
Yeah.
Yes.
The only thing that comes close is like the TNT Championship, how they do the open challenges. It's like as close as we've got today to the old television title where they would defend it every week.
Because that was something Saturday night you would always see Arn Anderson.
Yep.
10-minute time limit, and that was it.
Yeah. And I always loved Arn's promos like before a TV title match, because he's like, I'm the champion. I don't have to beat him. He's got 10 minutes to beat me.
And I was thinking, actually, the very first TV champion I remember was, oddly enough, was Tully. because when I first started watching
Mhm.
wrestling, Tully
Yep.
was the TV champ, and he was doing that 10-minute time limit thing, and Tully threw in $10,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, so and of course Dusty was the one who eventually got it because that's
Yeah,
the way it rolled.
Of course.
Yeah, and
He got Baby Doll out of the deal too.
yeah, because Baby Doll joined it during that time too. That's right.
Mhm.
And
But Arn Anderson, you talk about him being a worker's worker. He took a swarmy runt that was honestly is still not the most liked human being in wrestling, Tully Blanchard. And that was the worker. Tully was still the weasel. And they made that work for years. Like, who had a better WWF title run besides Demolition in the 80s than the Brainbusters?
That's true. Arn and Tully, that is my favorite tag team ever. They, they were never flashy. They didn't need to be. They went in and just beat people. And it
Yeah.
was, it was just so technical because I'm a huge fan of technical wrestling, and they were both just extremely technical. The way they cut the ring off, the way they would, work a body part, things like that. And like Arn was always the centerpiece, and not just with Tully, but with Bobby Eaton, Paul Roma, anybody else he ever won tag titles with. Arn was that centerpiece that made that machine work.
Because I remember WrestleMania 5 would have been their first, I think because they did do 6 and then they left shortly after.
Mm-hmm.
But Tito Santana hitting Martel, that match was against the Brainbusters.
Yep.
oh, that's when Strikeforce broke up.
Yep.
And that's when Strikeforce broke up. The perfect opponents for that to happen. And that angle was Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard.
Yep. Because Tito hit Martel by accident, and then the Brainbusters ended up hitting the spike pile driver on Tito.
Yep.
And that's when Rick Martel turned heel, which that one shocked me because Rick Martel, I remember him as AWA World Champion. He was kind of a white meat baby face. I never thought he would turn heel.
Yeah.
And then I said, "Oh, Rick Martel's a bad guy," and he's calling himself the model. What the crap is this?
Yeah, but for that time, it worked though.
Yes.
He was a really good heel. So
yeah, but you know who would know about the heels, Dwaylen? Whether Arn Anderson,
Ted
the Hillbilly Hill. Kyle, if you haven't listened to Ted's podcast,
you need to. It's good,
dude. Yeah, I mean, he is absolutely fantastic. He breaks a lot of stuff down, and I mean, he listens to us as well. So we support him. He supports us, and we've been on his show. He's been on our show, and you got to check him out. So tell everybody, go check out The Heel Truth. There's the Real Truth, and there's The Heel Truth. He is trending #1 in Antarctica, #1 on MySpace, award-winning, critically acclaimed. And if you don't believe he is, prove that he's not.
Yep, you got to prove it.
You got to prove he's not. But yeah,
that's the thing about being a heel that Arn Anderson says: as long as you have a little kernel of truth,
yep,
you can run with it.
Yep,
sounds like he's been listening to Ted.
Yeah,
so
yeah, dude, definitely check him out
in Maryland and prove it otherwise.
But Kyle, aren't you Michigan's second most favorite export?
I am Michigan's second greatest export. Behind the car.
There you go, Dwaylen.
There you go.
Yeah, so we have legends that just get attracted to us, like magnets. So.
And then the Brock Lesnar, what was it? Stun gun, 4 friends.
Oh, I would. Yes, right. You said I wouldn't fight him with a shotgun, a stun gun, and 4 friends. I still remember that. Yeah. But yeah.
Arn Anderson, gang warfare was something the Horsemen were. gang mentality with the Horsemen.
Yep.
The dude leading the charge was Arn Anderson.
Dangerous Alliance, the next faction he was with, which the Dangerous Alliance, I mean, you could almost argue, I mean, they were almost more powerful than the Horsemen.
I mean,
You know,
they weren't together long, but what they were able to do when, while they were together, and you have this group of guys that you didn't think had anything in common, but they all worked so good together. And like, Arn and Bobby Eaton, who had feuded against each other, they were friends in real life, but they had feuded against each other when the Midnight Express and the Horsemen were feuding. But then they were seamlessly became a tag team and won the tag titles.
Not just friends, they were also neighbors too. That's come out.
Talk about one of the most boring wrestlers ever, Larry Zbyszko. He partnered with him.
Yes, him and Arn. That was the only time. Honestly, that was the only time that I've ever liked Larry Zbyszko.
That man
was when he was tagging with Arn when they were the Enforcers and they were tag champions.
He was. I still can't watch a Zbyszko match.
Oh, Zbyszko, I mean, it really sounds kind of bad because he's actually a former AWA World Champion, but it was like right before they shut down.
Yeah.
But his big peak was actually at the beginning of his career with Bruno, because Bruno was the one who trained him, and then Zbyszko turned on him.
Yeah.
And that was like huge business back then. So
they didn't have a cage match at Shea Stadium?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Sold it out. Hogan Andre on the undercard.
That's right.
That's right, yeah.
The very same one.
But Zbyszko, walking snooze button, terrible to have on television. Terrible ringing out color commentary. He was better as a color commentator than he was a wrestler.
I agree.
Yeah. Because all of a sudden he became like super popular when he was a commentator, because they would start cheering. He'd have to stand up and
he'd
wave at everybody and then sit back down. And apparently they actually told him to stop. Yeah. 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 The Z, for Zbyszko.
Yeah.
And then he got that match with Scott Hall, who's his buddy.
Yeah.
Because they went back to the AWA days.
Right.
Yeah. But Arn Anderson made it Paul Roma, who made news tearing Hulk Hogan a second behind.
Yeah, recently, he did. Yep, I did see that.
Trashed him up, down, sideways, really good. He made Paul Roma a credible Horseman because that was his tag team partner.
Yeah, credible. I mean, it's still Paul Roma.
I mean, he made Paul Roma as credible as Paul Roma was ever going to be.
Okay, there you go.
Because I mean, he was a job guy in WWE, and then because even him and Jim Powers were the Young Stallions, but they were the job team for the Stars.
Yep. Well, Power and Glory, they weren't a great team, but I love their finishing move.
I liked Power and Glory. That's the only thing that I've liked. That's the only time I've liked Paul Roma was Power and Glory. I did love the Powerplex.
Powerplex is awesome.
But as far as, like Kyle was saying, as far as like being a credible star in wrestling, teaming with Arn is as close as he got.
That's true,
well, I give him that, and I give him a little bit when he teamed with Paul Orndorff. But that's it.
Pretty
he
wonderful.
Doesn't team. Yeah. He doesn't team with Paul Orndorff unless he gets that Horseman rub from Arn.
That's true.
Yeah.
He got the rub from Arn first, and he was able to carry that to actually a couple more tag titles with Paul Orndorff.
That's pretty wonderful.
Yep.
But that Power and Glory, the shirts they sold they were muscle shirts, half muscle shirts that were really big. Those ridiculous glasses.
The slanted type glass. Yeah.
And we're talking about the Dangerous Alliance, because Paul Roma wasn't part of that, because I think they didn't want him part of it. But just look at this list of names. You had Paul E. Dangerously, as the manager. Of course, Paul Heyman, Arn, Bobby Eaton, Zbyszko, Rick Rude, Steve Austin, and Medusa.
Yep.
Medusa was part. I mean, and Michael
Yeah.
Hayes, he was a manager at one point. But I mean, but you look at that list of names.
Yeah.
That's almost like arguably. I mean, you bump that up against the Horsemen. I mean, and they're both.
And I mean, yeah. And at one time, Rude was the United States champion. Arn and Bobby were the tag champions, and Austin was the world television champion.
Yep. So I mean, that was and Arn, but Arn was the one who really, once again, he was kind of the glue that held that together.
Yep.
So you want to talk about somebody, and Arn had a great singles run. You talk about the World Television Championship, and he's known for that. You say World TV Champion, you automatically think Arn.
Yep.
It's like, who's the one that was the greatest TV champion? Arn.
Yep.
But tag team champion, I mean, all the people he held the championship with.
Yeah.
I mean, that right there says something. So, I mean, he really could do just about everything there was. And of course, later on and Kyle and I have talked about this first. Well, the War Games happened after Arn retired because that's when Kurt Hennig replaced Arn because Arn gave him his spot.
Yeah.
That whole discussion. So the end of his career. So Steve, you're a military guy. One thing all military retirees have is neck, back, and knee pain.
That's why I'm on 60% disability. Probably could have got more.
The story, if it's true, I heard it was in a gym. The way he tells the story, it was in a gym. But no matter what, someone smacked him on the back and his arms went numb.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he said he was curling, and somebody slapped him on the back and his arm just went numb.
Yeah, it was like, hey, Arn, how you doing? And I was like,
yeah.
I've had that happening. I was helping someone move a piano, and some girl from the church smacked me on the back and said, "Oh, good job, way to help out. It takes two of them, and then you're on this side." That smack when I was engaged in the lift hurt so bad that I dropped my end because I went completely numb.
Why would she hit you in the back when, I mean, even if it is a friendly gesture while you're lifting something that heavy anyway?
Because etiquette with lifting is non-existent.
Guess not. So
it was meant to be a compliment.
Right.
It turned out to be a sharp pain. So I could tell you some gym stories for your other podcasts that I had 560 pounds on my back the other day, and onto us, and some dummy came right underneath the weight. And I just looked over, and you would have thought I was about to kill somebody, because if looks could kill, I would have done it. You have to be out of your mind to get under a bar with that much weight.
Oh.
And so the pain that he had to feel in his neck, that is scary.
Yeah.
So imagine whiplash from an accident and just living like that. And constant. So he would have been, if I'm right, pre-Austin, because Austin injured his at SummerSlam '97, right around this time.
The same time. You know what? I'm gonna have to look at the dates.
Arn would have been the first neck surgery that really they came out with, right? Did he come out like that too?
Dean Malenko had one, but they never mentioned it. It was never. It wasn't mentioned until after Arn had his, and they were trying to reform the Horsemen.
Yeah,
and they like zoomed in. I remember during a little interview thing they were doing, they zoomed in on Dean Malenko's neck, and you could see the scar where he'd had surgery. But yeah, Arns was the first real neck surgery that you really heard about, and at least that I heard about in wrestling. I mean, you hear years to come, you heard about him on a pretty regular basis, sadly. But yeah, Arns was the first one that they had really talked about a whole lot on television as somebody having, major neck surgery.
There had been broken necks
Mm-hmm.
in wrestling, especially ECW. Surprise there.
Yeah.
But he was the first one I remember. Like, they have neck surgery and they still come out. Like, what's a neck fusion?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
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 And SummerSlam in 1997 was on August 3rd that year. So the injury happened not long before Arn retired, but the gym incident, with somebody, just friendly gesture, made his arms go numb. It was all right about the same time. So,
and that was post surgery.
Yeah.
So one, probably in the gym a little too early, but that's the nature of his generation of wrestler. So they all came back because that's how you got paid.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you weren't wrestling, you didn't get paid. So,
So you have that. He's worried about his spot, probably training too early before he was healthy. Has that happen? And then they do this retirement thing. One of the most not memorable non-NWO segments in all of Nitro.
Yeah. I just wish they hadn't have turned it into. I wish they'd have just let him have his moment and retire without having to turn it into an angle for, the NWO, especially when, he gives Kurt Hennig his spot and then Kurt turns on him at the pay-per-view to join the NWO. And then it's like, I don't know. I'm just like, as much as Arn had given to the business, I think he deserved to get make this about Arn and leave the storyline stuff for the next week.
And
they did that. I think Bischoff just did a podcast on this Monday about Arn Anderson and his spot. So the story behind it.
Mm-hmm.
The original War Games was supposed to be WCW guys that included Ric Flair, but not the Horsemen.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, was this Bischoff like going after Flair for whatever reason it was? Because he did have an issue with Flair throughout his last couple of years, or because it doesn't seem to be something against Arn.
No, and it was actually Terry Taylor's idea for the parody, and Terry Taylor didn't think he wasn't thinking, oh, it's going to be insulting to him. He just thought it was funny, but he should have realized, grown adult should have realized that's not funny, because that was a genuine thing. That was real emotion out there the prior week. And here's the other ironic thing: the cooler Kevin Nash was holding,
that was Arn's.
That was Arn's cooler.
Yeah, that was Arn's cooler.
Because he said, "Hey, Arn, let me use your cooler. We're going to do the okay." And he went out there, and so Arn was a little heated when he came back, and after they had implied that he was a drunk,
They said later on, when they actually had like a match, and Arn kind of gave Nash a receipt, and but yeah, Nash was like, talk about a receipt. He's like, it was Arn's cooler that I used in the in the promos. So
like promo wise, that was really the first like parody of its kind, because the DX stuff happened the next year.
That's right. That was after that.
Yep.
And then they became regular in skits. But the parody, the biggest thing of the parody was how they made fun of Flair for being a giant crybaby.
Yeah. Yeah.
He does cry at everything. I mean, he really does.
He does.
Yeah. So
Well, I'd cry too if I was married 5 times and had that much alimony to pay out every month.
which he does. Yeah. He really does.
But I liked Mongo Conan when he played Mongo with the football, just throwing it up in the air and running around. And Buff Bagwell, what's sad is he had all the potential to be a star. Buff did. That character should have been that top hat. I would have wore that top hat to work in '98.
You can buy that.
You can still buy the top hats.
Yes, you can. He told us that personally. He did tell us that. So, which is wild to think that he told us that. I mean, that's yeah. But anyway,
the top hat. I don't know a soul that watched WCW in that time that didn't like the top hat.
Oh yeah, the Buff Bagwell gimmick was great.
Yeah.
So, but Kevin Nash is Arn Anderson. I watched this before we started. It wasn't a good parody of him personally. Like, where did he come up with all these things? And
the
why?
dog spot, the liver spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bellied up to the bar, and a fat woman came up to me. That's right. I said a fat broad because that's all the Horsemen can get. And really, after the NWO Invitational, where they crowned Miss NWO, you guys know what I'm
I remember that. Yeah, at the first sold out. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So that what was the point? Like, some of that was beyond like funny.
Some of that, plus some of that too, was like their way of just trying to get rid of the Horsemen, because Eric Bischoff had been trying to kill off the Horsemen for a few years because he didn't think that there was any value in the Horsemen, even though they generally got the biggest pop anytime they came out. But Bischoff just didn't see the value in the Horsemen, which tells you Bischoff's thinking. Of course, he didn't see value in Steve Austin either, and you see how that worked out. But I think that was a lot of that was to just humiliate the Horsemen. I mean, Arn included. Bischoff has said that he wished he could go back and change it, and I hope he's sincere about that. But
I believe he is. I've heard him say that on his podcast, and I haven't listened to his podcast in a long time, but he has talked about some things he wished he would have done different back when he was in charge.
And at the time, he was just, he had unlimited power over the company, and he was trying to put Vince out of business. So he was going to do anything he could, regardless of who he had to humiliate or roll over to get that done. So I think it was just a huge shot at the Horsemen as a whole.
You see the difference with the whole angle. We'll call it that, the parody. The Horsemen never got any get back.
No,
never. Yeah, and like the entire time that the NWO, especially when the NWO was really hot when it first started, through say mid '98, before they started adding like half the WCW roster to the NWO. Yeah, the Horsemen never got their receipt ever. They they'd always get beat up. They'd always get jumped by the NWO, and were never allowed to, get their receipt. And it's like, you're just these are supposed to be your heroes fighting against these invaders, and you're just making them look weak.
And then they killed wrestling in Greensboro with, the cage door up against Flair's head.
Yes, slamming the door on Flair's head. Yeah.
Will absolutely argue while a shock, it didn't just kill Greensboro. That was the beginning of the end for WCW. Because that told you your company heroes were not going to beat the NWO.
Yeah, I can see that because
Yeah.
that's like and like Kurt Hennig leaving the Horsemen and jumping to the NWO. That it's like it opened the floodgates, and it was just like, okay, like every other week we've got somebody else,
Yep.
WCW, jump into the NWO, and it's like you're like you said, Kyle, you're making your heroes look weak. You're just telling the audience they're never going to win, but you're also taking this super heel group that was red hot, and you're just watering it down. So, and it's like they used Arn to try to make the NWO bigger, and I feel like they just kind of disrespected Arn's legitimate retirement.
Yeah.
And wasted potential storylines that could have made things better.
The storytelling from Arn's retirement. So War Games was one of the last pay-per-views I got to watch. So I knew Flair and Bischoff Starrcade, but I didn't get to watch it. Sting Hogan at Starrcade, but I didn't get to watch it. So by the time that happened, I was just graduating basic training. So I missed most of that. I heard about it over letter. You won't believe what they did. It ruined it, and that and the other. WCW never told a story. And War Games, if you remember War Games all the way back to the first one, the heels always got their comeuppance.
Yes.
Yep.
And if I don't know if y'all realize, if you notice, all of the successful War Games that the Horsemen were involved in, Arn Anderson started every one of those.
Yeah.
Arn Anderson was the one who set the pace for the entire War Games match.
And you have like Arn Anderson in War Games, that history. I remember the Horsemen and the Stinger Squadron with Flying Brian and Sid Vicious bouncing that head off the top of the cage and power bombing him into the ground.
Yes, because he almost killed him. I mean,
because that was nasty. Yeah.
And so you have those moments where in the concept of the story, the heels won because the baby faces gave a valiant effort and Flying Brian could like take no more. And really it was El Gigante who gave up, not Brian Pillman. But with the War Games with Greensboro, the NWO, that wasn't even the NWO B team at that time. Like Conan was being built, but he was nothing special yet. Not till next year. Bagwell had potential, but he was essentially an American male. Six was the worker. You know why he was there.
Yeah.
But none of them got like what they deserved.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
And that should have been the chink in the armor that showed the NWO could be beaten. And then you take that into Starrcade and Sting beats Hogan clean.
Yeah.
And they never did it. Greensboro, I don't think Greensboro has sold out since in a wrestling show.
That's something I'd have to.
Yeah, I'd have to look.
Check.
I'm not sure, but I know for a while there though they
struggled.
Yeah, they killed that town with that angle.
I mean, and that's Greensboro, one of the wrestling towns.
That's like especially in the early to mid 80s, that was one of the hotbeds for pro wrestling.
But when WCW finally shut its doors and everybody screamed hallelujah, and Arn went to work for WWE, and he was a one of the backstage, producers, talent, an agent. And along the way, he did one more wrestling move when he spinebustered Undertaker at WrestleMania 18, I believe. No, not 18. Oh, was it 18? The one, it was in Toronto, I believe.
Yes, it was 18. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was Undertaker versus Flair. Yeah, and Arn slid in just perfect.
All of a sudden, just boom,
and caught him with the spine buster, and it was beautiful. Yeah.
And think about this: Arn with a bad neck. I mean, with documented bad neck
and a bad hand.
And a bad hand.
Yeah.
And he did a spine buster to the Undertaker, who was a legit 6'9", 6'10".
Yeah, I think 6'10" and a half, almost 6'11", and like probably 320, 325.
Yeah. And Arn just still spun like he had never lost a beat. Just boom, and dropped him.
And recently, AEW, he's come in and laid one down.
Has he? Okay, I hadn't seen that one.
Yes, he did. Yep, he did.
But as a talent producer, he's responsible for probably the greatest star of our current generation, John Cena.
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that about Arn.
That was Cena's personal agent.
Okay. So, I mean, you know what? I couldn't think of anybody really better to show Cena, really sit him down and, show him, okay, here's it. I'm going to take you under my wing and you're going to do what I tell you and you're going to become a star. And Cena, obviously, he kind of did. Arguably one of the biggest names ever.
Just a little bit. But Arn is just, my opinion, Arn Anderson is the greatest wrestler to never be a world heavyweight champion. Arn had everything. I mean, they talk about, people having all the tools. Arn legitimately had everything. It's just, Arn was one of those people. I feel like Arn was one of those people that everything he did was for the betterment of the business and not so much himself. I feel like he wasn't a very egotistical guy as far as, I want to be world champion, in spite of everybody else. I think Arn knew his role, so to speak, and he played that role very well. And everything he did was to entertain the people who had spent their money to see him wrestle.
I'll go greatest wrestler without drug problems to have never won a world.
Okay.
I'll give you that because Arn, for me, Arn's number one, and then Scott Hall is number two of the best wrestler to never win a world championship.
I got Jake the Snake, $1 Million Man.
I think if Hogan hadn't have been in the way, I think Jake could have won the WWF title. But
DiBiase also could have.
Yeah, but they weren't going to give it to either one of those two while Hogan was the meal ticket. So
that don't work. That don't work for me, brother.
Yeah.
Then Arn. And Scott Hall, he had moments, but I could see why.
Especially later in his career, I could see why they didn't put the world title on him. Because I mean, it would have been a liability considering his personal issues. But
he did all the drugs.
Yeah, but just talent wise and charisma, mic skills, just everything.
Yeah.
He had it all.
Now, if Arn is 3 inches taller, world champion, no doubt.
Yeah. And Arn, I didn't realize this. It sounds small by like a wrestler standards. Dwayne, Arn's our height. He's 6'1".
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And Kyle, how tall are you?
5'11", and
so pretty close, same height.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all three. And Arn is our height.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's got a lot more muscle, and you don't think about it because Arn was not like a super jacked up guy, but I mean, you could tell. I mean, he worked out, and he was on a football team in high school, and he was a legitimate athlete, and and I think that's why he became so good. And like you said, he was very giving. He was not selfish at all in the ring. You know,
No.
he'll tell you he lost more matches than he won because he said that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
You
He's
know?
like I'm a heel. I'm supposed to lose.
Yeah.
The good guy's supposed to win. You know, the good guy's supposed to beat me. That's how the story goes.
Yeah.
And you know, he'd said so, and that actually when they first went to WWE, him and Tully, he said they were wrestling the same matches like they did in WCW, where they were giving some to their opponents,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so that way their opponents would look legit, and so when they beat them, it'd make them look better. He said the first time they did that, Barry Darsow was waiting for him when he got backstage because him and Arn were really good friends. He said, "Come here." He said, "You can't do that here." He said, "These are squash matches. You're supposed to squash them." You know, but Arn's his nature was not, you know, to squash. So he said, unfortunately, he had to do that.
Yeah.
The other thing is his character. And we think about this when Arn passes away. The man's clearly had a falling out with Ric Flair. And
they've actually talked about that.
Yeah,
nothing has come out about he doesn't demean Flair's lifestyle, his womanizing, his money habits. He just leaves it be. Even Sid Vicious, who attacked him with the squeegee, you've never really heard Arn Anderson put Sid Vicious down in a podcast.
Oh no, it wasn't a squeegee. It was scissors.
Yeah,
he stabbed him with scissors.
Yeah, Arn is never really. I mean, not to say he hasn't acknowledged it, but yeah, he just doesn't discuss it. It's like it happened. It's done. I'm a professional. I'm going to go about my business and still, you know, do what I'm asked to do.
Now somebody did attack somebody else with a squeegee though, and I'm trying to remember who that was now.
I can't remember. But I heard that too, but I can't remember who it was.
But yeah, did they have a reunion right before Flair's last match, like a Horseman reunion?
They did, because you could take when they were in Nashville, you could take pictures with the Horsemen, and Arn was there. Arn, Tully, Barry, Flair, of course, and JJ Dillon. Because I saw some pictures on Twitter where people had gotten paid to get their picture taken with them.
And you know how Dwaylen really knew about all that? He was there.
Yeah,
he was there. He was there at SummerSlam.
Yeah, I was at SummerSlam. Yeah.
I didn't see any photos of the Flair match. I did see. I did see the seating arrangements at SummerSlam.
Yeah,
but you really don't like. He's got the Four Horsemen symbol, the trademark now.
He does.
He created it.
Yeah,
he was the creator of it, and finally gets some money off it. But even Tully, who honestly cost him what, $150,000 by failing a drug test,
something like that. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, because when they were supposed to come, they were going to come back and reform the Horsemen, and then Tully failed his drug test, and then WCW pulled Tully's offer and lowered Arn's.
Yeah.
But Arn had already committed to coming back, so he came back anyway.
So he hasn't really bashed him either.
No, he hasn't. Arn hasn't bashed anybody, and the way wrestling is, where wrestlers, especially now that, you know, podcasts are readily available for somebody to jump on and talk about whatever gripe they have, you never hear Arn have a bad word about anybody, unless it's just legitimate, about, like, if it's somebody that's just, you know, unprofessional or unsafe in the ring or something like that.
Right, because he did mention, like, one of his early podcasts, and it was like a one-time incident, and it was nowhere near as bad as, you know, him and Sid getting all stabby with each other in London.
Yeah,
but he got into it with Disco Inferno.
Slapped him.
And yeah, I can understand that too. I can understand that too.
And that's just based on the name Disco Inferno.
That, and it's like Glenn Gilberti is just, he's just an annoying human being. I've listened to some. He's been on Bustin' Open, and I've listened to some of his stuff, and it's like, dude, you never drew a dime, but you act like that you were this huge star in wrestling, and it's like, just accept the fact that you were a bit player, you made a decent living.
You were
and
mid card at best.
yeah, you were, yeah.
But he's still $1 million career earner.
Now he is, because I mean he's doing podcast stuff, and he's actually become better known for the podcast stuff.
In
I think
WCW, he was making $300,000 a year.
Inferno was.
Inferno was. So
Yeah, I heard he got
Oh.
paid. Here's the thing, though. He was also very good friends with Hall and Nash. If you were good friends with Hall and
Oh,
Nash,
that'll do it.
you got paid because they made sure you got paid.
So that didn't stop him from getting fired for failing to job to Jacqueline.
That is true. Yeah.
He can be an annoying human being, and he's got political leanings, and some people side one way, other people side another way. I don't think the issue was that. It was just a habit on the bus. He was Enzo on the bus before.
There you go.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yep.
So everyone occasionally needs a can of get right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And speaking of the whole thing with Arn and Flair, Flair's actually said, he said when Reed passed away, and Reed died of an overdose, he said Arn was one of the people who did not reach out to him. And yep. And he said that's why Flair had kind of, was kind of on the outs with. Now it appears like they probably have at least somewhat made up, just because, I mean, they have so much history together. And it's like, I'm pretty sure Arn would not have said, well, the heck with you, Flair. I don't, care, so, I mean, I would think that they work those issues out, because Flair also knows he's 73 years old, and he finally had, his last match. We'll say last match.
I hope it was his last match.
Yeah, he passed out twice during the match.
Yeah.
Dehydration. Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly.
Allegedly. He passed out because he's 73 and had no business being in the ring.
Exactly.
For Arn, the story allegedly goes that he was being honest with Flair about his son's personal activities. Triple H was one that was honest. Hey, your son's shooting some drugs into his veins. He's going to have a drug test. If he doesn't clean up, he's not. We have a scheduled drug test. Flair was in denial over the habits.
Which makes sense. Because Flair was in denial on his own habits. So
yeah.
You look at that and you see someone who's into that, someone's doing that, living in denial, doesn't want to hear the truth, and then the consequence of those actions happen. What are you supposed to say that you didn't say to prevent the issue from happening?
Yeah.
Right.
And Flair's burned so many bridges with people over the years that, I mean, you got to take whatever Flair says too. I've learned, especially in his later years, you've got to take that with like a whole container of salt, because Flair's going to embellish it. Flair's always going to embellish it to make himself look good.
Yep.
At the expense of others. So, I mean, who knows if, I mean, Arn may not have reached out, but Arn may have reached out, and maybe it was more of a Flair didn't respond when Arn reached out or whatever. So,
that could have possibly happened also.
Yeah.
But, like I said, I really hope they did make up. And now I'm glad to see Arn is back training, I guess, with AEW.
Yeah, he's a coach. He's a coach over there. Him and Dustin Rhodes, who's been working a lot with the women's division, and
QT Marshall.
QT Marshall, yeah. So Arn has definitely had a Hall of Fame career. I'm glad he was inducted as part of the Horsemen. I would still like to see him inducted
Yep.
as a singles wrestler, because I mean, he definitely has a Hall of Fame singles career.
Yeah.
And I would like to see him inducted into a Hall of Fame as a singles wrestler.
And now that Triple H is running things, because that's actually, that could be an episode about the Hall of Fame. What will happen with that now?
That is true.
Because Triple H he looks at talent. He doesn't look, he may look at the people who should be in the Hall of Fame, like Ivan Koloff, whose birthday was today. Ivan Koloff, and then he could also look at Arn, because Triple H, you can tell he's an Arn fan.
Yeah.
Just from his moves. I mean, and they may go, you know what? He made a mistake with Alicia Fox, and some people don't know why Arn got fired from WWE, because he was Alicia Fox's agent. He allowed her to work when she was supposedly intoxicated, which Alicia Fox, her issues with alcohol have been well documented.
Yeah.
And so that's Arn. If he did it, which he won't talk about it, he's got a non-disclosure. Arn's got a non-disclosure agreement with Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
Go figure. I don't think it's for the same reasons everybody else has.
Yeah. But, not for the same reasons, but he has one. But I honestly, I don't think Arn would talk about it anyway, because I think he's got enough respect for Alicia Fox that would, talking about her issues without her permission, I don't think he would do that. I just think he's a lot more of a professional than that.
Yeah. And I honestly, I may be in the minority. I liked Alicia Fox.
She has the best Northern Light suplex ever. The technique, the bridge, everything was fantastic.
That's a whole discussion on the one women's match that we were given throughout most of our fandom. So having two women's matches is relatively new on Monday Night Raw.
Especially having one that lasts longer than like 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, or having a tournament that lasts longer than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Total time. I mean,
the semifinal tag team match for the women's tag titles this past Monday lasted longer than the entire tournament for the Queen's Crown.
Yeah. But then again, Clown Shoes. Yeah, Cal, I'm pretty sure you've heard us. Clown Shoes, that's John Laurinaitis. That's his name now from now on. That's because Clown Shoes is no longer running anything.
Yeah.
Clown Shoes should have never been running anything after the stories came out the first time he was taken out.
Yes. I agree. I 100% agree.
I can't believe he married the Bella's mom.
Oh, I can.
After he was talking about how hot the Bellas were, you have a mother?
I could see him. He's got peepholes in the bathroom at the family house.
He's a creeper for sure.
But so not a fan of Mr. Laurinaitis. Not even when he was with the dudes with attitudes.
The only thing I will ever give him credit for is creating the cutter. It's the only thing I'll give him credit for. He was the one who created the cutter. I mean, other people have improved upon it, but he invented that move.
I'll give him credit for being Road Warrior Animal's brother. That's about it.
Nah, I can't even get him credit for that.
No, because he doesn't look like Road Warrior.
That's true. You're right. I mean,
so maybe they have different dads.
No, because they're both named Laurinaitis. So
maybe different moms.
I may no. Okay, I could. I'll go with that one.
Like that's possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was something else. Like just working in the WWE environment for 20 years backstage, knowing what is now coming out, and even the stuff that hasn't come out yet, because there's a whole goodie box of stuff that's not come out yet.
Oh yeah,
that's true. I mean, this is
a man with that character survived in that environment for that long.
Well, because the owner had the same character, so he was able to, he had
no, referring to Arn.
Oh, you're talking about
Arn. Yeah, Arn. Yeah, working in that environment.
That is true. Yeah.
And I think that says something about the character of Marty Lundy,
Yeah.
you know, himself, to not give in. In fact, you know what, Dwaylen, the guy who started talking about the stuff in AEW, as you were texting me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, he was telling me and another guy that he actually used to work in a hotel in Louisville, and it was one of the hotels that the wrestlers sometimes would come stay in when they had events, and he actually met Arn Anderson.
Oh, okay.
You know, and he said he was super nice guy, you know, very friendly. Talked to him. He said a couple other ones, like he said Dusty Rhodes, he wasn't unfriendly, but he just
Mhm.
wasn't real talkative.
Yeah.
And he had also met like Mike Tomlin. He said
Yeah.
another one who was not very friendly.
Yeah.
You know, but he said Arn Anderson. He said he was super good guy.
Yeah.
You know, so and I'm glad to hear something like that, because he seems like he is like one of, even though he was a bad guy in the ring,
Mm-hmm.
but he's one of the good guys in wrestling, like good guys, like life wise.
Yeah.
And you heard a lot of that with the Bobby Eaton memorial show.
Yeah.
That's another high quality human being. You don't attract that type of person without being a person of similar character.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
true. Yep.
So, and that he's still helping take care of Bobby Eaton's family, wife, kids.
Well,
'Cause
Bobby Eaton's wife passed away a month before he did.
well,
So he's probably definitely taking care of the kids and grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if because that was like, I'm going to say Bobby Eaton, he died of a broken heart, because I mean he and his wife.
Oh, I'm
didn't get
sure.
over,
Yeah.
you know, that was Bill Dundee's daughter that he was married
Yeah.
to,
yeah,
but yeah, Arn. I mean, he talks about him and Bobby being neighbors. You know, not like right next door, but just
Mm-hmm.
like 2 or 3
Same
houses
neighborhood.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because they lived in kind of a cul-de-sac the way he was talking, but one of their houses would always have like kids running in and out.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
they would always hanging out. You know, so Bobby always had candy for the kids. Because you hear these stories about Bobby, he always had something for everybody.
Yeah.
yeah,
You know, so and the fact that he and Arn, like you said, Kyle, he and Arn are, you know, they were best friends. You know, so that kind of likeness, both good people,
yeah,
and you know, so I'd be glad to see Arn, like you said, Joellen, go in the Hall of Fame by himself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though he's well deserving with the Horsemen,
Yes.
you know, but also well deserving with his own slot.
Mm-hmm.
And when the AEW, I'm pretty sure AEW, they're not going away anytime soon.
No.
You know, so they may get it to the point where they end up like with a Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Arn would probably definitely go in that for helping train.
Yeah.
You know, like the new people, because Arn gets the business, and I really wish, you know, we have more people kind of study Arn's technique in the ring, study his promos, and just everything that he did.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I'm glad, Kyle, that when you texted and say, "Hey, I have an idea for a show on this particular date because it's the date his retirement," I was like, you know what, that's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
that and it's something. FTR is a group that studies a lot of what Arn did,
Yes.
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 and it really shows in their matches. It makes them unique.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They don't sell for anything. I almost cursed there. They don't sell moves the way they should, but that may be the AEW style. But tag team wrestling, picking a body part,
Mhm.
all the things except for the mannerism. I remember Arn Anderson with the throat thing before anyone else did that.
Yes.
And now they can't really do that because of just like
Yeah.
TV type of laws. But yeah, I do need to go ahead and wrap this up. You know, but yeah, thank you, Kyle, for the suggestion. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming
thank
on the
you.
show. Because
Yeah.
I mean, we've been talking about you coming on for a while, and we were finally able to make it happen. And it was a perfect opportunity. You know,
It's
so
always fun. Like I said in the emails, Dwaylen is your perfect co-host. Compliments you. It balances out the show. It makes it better.
Thank you. I appreciate that. For real. Thank you.
I am still up to way too much and trying to just, like I said, my son's embarrassed of his diagnosis. and I'm trying to prove to him that it's no big deal.
Right.
And that is, I maintain too much of a schedule.
Right. We get it, because we've got Steve and I both have a lot going on too.
So it's school, it's work, it's volunteering, then it's in the gym. I'm training people, staying busy, and working with a group with other kids with diagnoses, an underserved population, to say the least.
Right.
Just trying to do something, and honestly carrying any type of character, although I don't communicate the best. There's a lot of people that carry burdens that they don't talk about. And I know a lot of people that have committed suicide because of it, including my own brother. So that's something I carry. My teammates are aware of it. That's just trying to make a difference in my little part of the world.
Right.
And that's my contribution. You guys are meant to podcast, and that's a great thing. And to see you guys on the top 200, top 80, interviewing Buff. I wish you guys got Progressive Overload. That was something.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, until you mentioned it to us, and I was like, well, I mean, we were still shocked. I mean, I still have his number in my phone. Just because I'm like, I got Buff Bagwell. I'm not going to call him because he may go with this.
Yeah.
But yeah, and this is not going to be the last time you're going to be on here.
Oh no, definitely not.
I did train to be a wrestler. I think we should do an angle with NWF. That'd be fun. Get all three of us out there. You can be your manager.
If you can, we can talk to, because I've actually suggested some things through Noah. Noah's like, Gabriel, he's the person I've talked to about things. But Roger, I don't know how receptive he is, because I've tried to push some things through Noah to him, how receptive he is to somebody who's not there with him, that he doesn't know.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, we could try. I mean, well, I was going to say the worst thing they can do is say no, but the worst thing to do is say, you know what, get out of my building.
It's a great set of stories. Being dumb at 19 years old, trying to train to be a wrestler with all the other guys in the dorms, and going out to Dundalk, Maryland, which is a trash hole of Maryland, but that's where they did their training center.
And you know what? That's kind of saying something, because Maryland has a lot of trash holes.
Dundalk was something else back in '99. That was on the ban list. So all sorts of fun, and just doing something would be, a show, NWA reunion down in North Carolina. They got that. A big show somewhere, and WrestleMania up in Philadelphia next year. Well, 2 years now.
I'm gonna say, I think next year it's Los Angeles. Okay, I didn't realize that they've already got it scheduled for the next year in Philadelphia, though.
Yep.
Somehow missed that.
They're going to start selling tickets for Philadelphia here shortly.
And you're fairly close to Philadelphia. Fairly.
I could throw a football to Pennsylvania from my house.
Let's say, yeah.
And I'm very close to Pennsylvania, but I've got none of the freedom or taxes because I'm still on the Maryland side.
Yeah, Maryland, I do remember that. But anyway, yeah, so yeah, we will definitely have to get another date for you to be on the show. This has been an absolutely great show.
Yep.
And yeah, perfect topic, and perfect time for you to come back. And I will have to announce, everybody listening, I will not have, I will not be able to record next Monday because my wife is having surgery. We are going to try to record that. She should be well enough for me to record on Thursday. But I mean, I'm not going to say that one's a absolute guarantee, but I'm definitely going to try it because I mean, she more likely she'll be okay by then. Monday, I'm not even going to try it.
No, I
Well,
wouldn't.
that's the day. Yeah, that's the day she is having her surgery. So
Yeah.
I'm not even going to bother with the podcast. But Kyle, once again, thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, this has been great. And I would say, everybody, got to say goodbye for now until next Monday.
Yep.
And if I don't see you, God bless.
God bless.
God bless.